Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Walik Boone. I am the Student Life Manager here for the Transitional Academy at Medgar Evers College. I'm excited to have you all here for this Fair Housing event. Fair Housing Month is held every April in honor of the passing of the Housing Act of 1968. But here in New York, we also celebrate the New York Human Rights Law. Ain't that correct? Yes. Which protects us from discrimination in housing. Tonight, we are not just here to celebrate, but to educate renters with low incomes and people with rental assistance vouchers about their rights and the resources available to them. Rental assistance vouchers are essential programs for helping people experience housing instability to assess affordable housing. And I don't need to remind you that there's a crisis of affordable housing in the city. Am I correct? Yes. However, vouchers holders and low-income tenants are often overlooked and underserved. Tonight, we are here to clear up some of your questions and point of confusions. And we hope that you leave here feeling supportive, empowered with the resources that you need. However, before I begin, I would just like to tell you a little bit about the Transitional Academy here at Medgar Evers College and why it was established. So in 2017, we became aware that we have students here on campus that are homeless, look like you and I, but you would not know unless they self-disclose. So a group of faculty, staff, students, deans, and administrators got together and said, we need to do something about this problem. The Transitional Academy was established 2017 in spring, but what we learned was that not only these students was homeless, they was faced with housing instability. So not everyone is homeless. We know the difference between homelessness and housing instability. Not only was they faced with those two issues, they was faced with food insecurity. We cannot separate the two. They was faced with domestic violence. They was faced with having lack of technology to do their homework. They was faced up having lack of clothing to feel comfortable in the classroom. They didn't have any transportation to get back and forth to school. They was hopping the turnstiles. They was asking the bus driver for a ride to get to school. That becomes discouraging if you're faced with all that hardship. And eventually what happens is the student begins to say, you know what, this ain't the place for me. I need to withdraw. However, in the back of their mind, they also saying that a higher education degree to get me out of my pitfall or get me out of my hardship. So what the Transitional Academy does, we keep our students on track so they can graduate on time and improve their living conditions. So that's some of the work we have been doing. We have about a 65% graduation rate amongst those that come to the Transitional Academy, and about 75% of those we retain for the following year, with the help of you all here. So the Transitional Academy doesn't do it alone. We look to you all as external partners as well as our internal partners to help our students get to that finish line, which is to graduate. So with that said, to bring greetings here tonight on the behalf of our president, Dr. Patricia Ramsey, I would like to bring up my supervisor, Senior Vice President of Enrollment Management and Student Success, Dr. Jesse King.
Thank you, Dr. Boone. Whenever I give remarks, and I know I'm bringing greetings on behalf of my president, I always like to acknowledge the fantastic work that Dr. Boone is doing on behalf of our students. And we are truly fortunate to have him here at Medgar Evers College with the passion that he brings to this work. And we see every day the impact that he is making through the Transition Academy. So please give him a round of applause. Thank you, Dr. Boone. On behalf of our president, Dr. Patricia Ramsey, I want to welcome you tonight to this event, and I bring you greetings. And unfortunately, Dr. Ramsey was unable to make this event, but most certainly this is an issue that is very dear to her own heart. You often heard her say, have you ever heard her speak publicly, that social justice is in Medgar Evers College's DNA. And these issues around affordable housing, around equity for everyone is important to the college, but it is important to her as it is important to you. And I remember years ago for myself, growing up in East Baltimore, I happened to read a book entitled Not in My Neighborhood, How Bigotry Helped Shape a Great American City. And in that book, it outlined some of the issues and politics around how people are housed, who has access to housing, where they have access to housing. And although we may think that those things happen by circumstance, but really it happened intentionally. And so it's very important to shine a light on these issues wherever they exist. And although the book really focused in Baltimore, we know that these issues are national issues, and they happen in any city across the country, and particularly where communities have higher concentrations of Black and brown people. And so we are fortunate and we're very happy tonight to have this session. I want to thank our partners, Assembly member Crystal Hudson, for her leadership in this space. Our community partners, CAMBA and CAMBA HomeBase, for everything that you bring to support around these issues, and most certainly support to Medgar Evers College, as well as the other distinguished panelists tonight who will be sharing information. And so I hope that each of you all are able to gain valuable information, to connect with a resource so that you know that this is a fight that you don't have to go at alone, that there are people within this city, within this community that really want to stand with you as we make sure that affordable housing, access to housing, is a human right for all people. So again, thank you. Welcome to Medgar Evers College. We open our doors to you, and I hope that you are able to gain some valuable information tonight. Thank you.
I would like to introduce our moderator for tonight, Ms. Grace Ruiz, who is currently the program manager for outreach, marketing, and community partnership with CAMBA HomeBase, refugees, and workforce development program. So let's give Grace a great hand as I bring her up.
All right, does everybody hear me? Amazing. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I really am so happy that we're having a full crowd, and I'm gonna keep this short because I wanna get to this panel so you guys can get all this information. My name is Grace. I manage the outreach and marketing and partnerships at CAMBA HomeBase. And thank you and welcome to our first Know Your Rights panel and resource fair. The main objective of this panel is to illuminate tenants, voucher holders, and potential voucher holders during Fair Housing Month, as Waleek mentioned, tenants' rights, voucher discrimination, and the step-by-step process that we all want you to know. We all want you to feel empowered and informed. So yeah, let's get this started. We created this event because we want tenants to have guidance, clarity on the many questions that you guys may have. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here and allowing me to introduce the lovely panelists. But we're gonna get started first with introducing our first panelist, who is actually going to be doing presentations today. We're gonna have two presentations from HomeBase and from Unlock NYC. And we're gonna start with Melissa Mowery, who is the Senior Vice President for CAMBA HomeBase, who we're gonna start with her HomeBase presentation. So Ms. Mowery, can you please come to the podium and I will give it a go. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the effort that was put in for this event. And usually this presentation would take probably 2 hours, and I've condensed it down to 15 minutes. So we're gonna go fast and furious through the process. Next slide, please. So the basics of HomeBase. HomeBase is in every community in New York City, in the 5 boroughs. We're funded by the New York City Department of Social Services, and our goal is to prevent people from becoming homeless and experiencing the trauma of being unhoused. The approach is to personalize each individual's situation and determine what is the best way to stabilize their housing. And we also have an important role to play with FEPS and city FEPS. As you can see, I just wanted to say the tree is the Department of Social Services. You have Department of Homeless Services, and HRA, Department of Human Resources. And HomeBase falls under that umbrella of HRA. And we are not HRA, we're actually local nonprofits. So who do we serve? We work with people who have a threat of eviction, if they have rental arrears, utility arrears, if they have safety and repair issues in their apartment, domestic violence, any type of situation that is causing some instability. And we like to tell people that only an enrollment specialist can tell you whether you're eligible or not eligible for HomeBase. There's a lot of myths in the community, and we want to be able to assess each person's situation individually. And if you are currently unhoused or living in a shelter or on the street, we cannot serve people who are in that situation. The shelter program can serve those folks. Next slide. How do you become eligible for HomeBase? So if you're a family with children, you have to be at or below 200% of poverty. You have to have an imminent risk of homelessness. So we have a risk assessment that we use that HRA gives us to use, and we assess risk. And so if someone's at imminent risk and they fall at or 200% of the poverty level and they're a family with children, then they should be eligible for HomeBase. If you're a single or a single adult, it's 30% at or below AMI, area median income. And of course, we are the aftercare provider for people in the community who have left the shelter with a subsidy or even short-term rental assistance. We provide aftercare services for people living in the community. This is just the income threshold for families and individuals or adult families. So you have the family, number of people in the family, and the income level. How do we help? We have two tracks. There's basically financial stability that we offer and housing stability. So for financial stability, of course, we offer money to pay for rental arrears, utility arrears, moving costs, furniture or storage fees. For everyone we give money to, we have money management and financial education. We provide employment services, applications for advocacy. We do a benefits review for everyone that we assess to determine if people are getting all the benefits that they should be getting. And in most home-based locations, there's 26, as you can see, in all the neighborhoods, and they're run basically by 7 nonprofits. Maybe I'm wrong there. So we have, in most of those offices, there are HRA consultants on site so that we can get benefits issuance. If there's a problem with someone's PA case, we can take a look at that with the help of consultants. And on the housing stability side, we provide landlord-tenant mediation. It's informal mediation. We do referrals to legal services, but legal services are very overwhelmed, as are the home-based offices right now. We do new applications for subsidies, and we're going to talk about FEPs and city FEPs. We assist current subsidy voucher holders, as I stated earlier, with aftercare. We can help with recertifications, transfers, moves, restorations. We offer relocation assistance, and we do refer people to our partners if there's services that someone may need that we don't actually provide. What we do not do is we're not brokers or we're not licensed brokers, so we do not find housing. We leave that up to the licensed professionals. That's how you can access HomeBase. You have all the locations and the addresses and the phone numbers. And you can also call 311. This is just a map of CAMBA's HomeBase area that we cover. We cover parts of Brooklyn, most of Brooklyn, and Staten Island. There's all of our contact information, and we can also email cambahomebase@camba.org. Now, let's get into the voucher process. So, what we do is we process vouchers for city FEPs and FEPs, And we were doing emergency housing vouchers, and then we filled up all the slots in the city. So we don't have access to NYCHA emergency housing vouchers, but we do now have some access to HCR housing vouchers in the community right now. What happened is they released a group of vouchers, and some of those people ran out of time, and so they released those vouchers back to the line. So it is a waiting process though. Once someone goes on the line for an emergency housing voucher, it's taken at a minimum probably 6 months at this point for people to be called, for us to be able to make an application. So that process is not something that's going to stop someone who's at imminent risk of homelessness right now. But if you want to be in that line, you have to just apply. What we do at HomeBase is we do an intake and eligibility assessment, and that's a client would come in and submit their documents, and we would assess their eligibility. Number two, if you're eligible for City FEPS or FEPS, a shopping letter would be issued at that time. And the shopping letter just basically lists the number of rooms and the maximum amount of rent. If you're eligible for a voucher and you want to stay where you currently are, then we would skip down to step 5. You would be a FEPS or a City FEPS to stay case. But let's go through step 3 and 4 before we get there. So let's say you don't have an apartment and you want to move. Your next step is that you would search for an apartment, and when we issue a shopping letter for someone, we close their case because we don't want a case to sit open if there's no progress. So we close a case, you have the shopping letter, client has a shopping letter, they go out, they look for an apartment, and when they find an apartment, they bring the landlord documents back to the HomeBase office, and we will reopen the case and start the application process. The first part of that application process is a pre-clearance and inspection. And what that is to make sure that the place is habitable. There's databases that are checked to make sure that the place is rentable and that it is in livable condition. At that point, if the place passes inspection, that's fine. We start working on getting the documents to submit the application. If it doesn't pass inspection, we ask the landlord to make repairs. All we can do is ask the landlord to make repairs. We have no authority to force that landlord to make repairs. In most cases, landlords will make repairs. In some cases, they won't. And if they don't, if it lags on, we move on and try to look for another apartment. If once we put the application together and the package, we have to review that package. It goes through 2 levels of review at the HomeBase office, and then we submit it to HRA, and HRA then whenever we submit that application, you're in line with all the other people in the city whose application has been submitted. So it takes a little bit of time. It takes more time. It took more time 2 months ago. It's taking less time as HRA is staffing up, and so are we, trying to get additional staff. So the more staff we have, the less time this whole process takes. If someone's approved, awesome. We work to approval. So, in some cases it can take longer depending on if a landlord is waiting to give us documents or we're waiting on client documents. It can take longer, but once we get an approval, then we're ready to go. Checks are cut and a lease is signed and there's a key exchange, and that's how the process works. So it can be done in, usually it takes probably 6 to 8 weeks for this process to go from step 1 to step 7. In some situations, it can go longer based on documentation, or if someone presents one thing to us and HRA sees something else in their data system, they may ask for additional documents. But that's really about how long it should take. Before the pandemic, this process would take 3 to 4 weeks. All right, so household shopping letters. All right, this can be confusing, but that's okay because that's why we're here. Let's talk about it. If you receive a shopping letter, that tells you that you've been approved for a housing subsidy, and you can look for a FEPS or a City FEPS apartment. If you want to move, if you're living someplace and you have this and you want to move, you have to get what's called a good cause transfer. And there are those, if you have a subsidy at a location and you decide you don't want to live there anymore and you just up and leave, no one knows that. The city doesn't know that. The city continues to pay rent there. So if that happens, it looks like the person has abandoned their voucher. And we don't want that to happen. We want people to communicate with us so that we can get good cause transfers from HRA so that people have permission from HRA to move. So, and this is the mechanism that tells one landlord you're not getting any more rent, and the new landlord, this is what you're getting. So the number of bedrooms and the maximum rent is listed on the shopping letter. And some people don't agree with that, and that's okay. There are ways that you can do a reasonable accommodation for your needs, and that's documentation that we present to HRA, and they make a determination on whether someone should get more bedrooms. Let's say someone needs medical equipment, or someone needs a first floor apartment, or whatever. These requests are made to HRA, and we take them and we present them to HRA. There's also many different apartments that people can rent in the community, and there's a list of them. There's probably 2 rent-controlled apartments, so we won't be able to get those. This is the maximum rent and utilities that City FEPS and FEPS will pay as of January 1st, 2023. So if we're lucky, the rent standards are updated once a year if they're approved. And Section 8 is different. There are some times where they can help clients with utilities. So you could just do a Google search, how do I get Section 8 to help me with my utilities if I'm in a Section 8 apartment, and it'll speak to that. You can also go to Section 8 and ask them. So this is the listing. We also, we get asked a lot, what are the differences within the community, what happens? So you have City FEPS moves from the shelter in the community. They're all the same, 1st month's rent, 3 months rent, supplement. The broker's fee is up to 15%. The security voucher is covered. The security deposit is covered by a voucher, a security voucher. And you have 1 minute a month's unit hold incentive that we can pay landlords if it's taking us longer. And there's not a signing bonus. So as you can see, FEPS moves from the shelter are a little different. The difference between a FEPS move from the shelter and the FEPS move in the community is a FEPS move from the shelter, a broker gets 15% of the annual rent. A FEPS move in the community, the broker gets half a month's rent as the broker fee. Not half the broker fee. The broker fee is 1/2 month's rent. So don't ask where the other half is. That's what the half is the whole. And there was Section 8. I just think it's important to point out that only the 1st month's rent of the supplement is provided. There's not, the broker's fee. If you use a broker, sometimes HomeBase can pay that fee. Sometimes the city will pay that fee. Sometimes the client will pay that fee. The security deposit, there's none. So, you have to come up with the security deposit fee. And in some cases, HRA will pay that with a one-shot deal. That's just interesting to point out. How to keep your voucher active. Sometimes this happens through no fault of the client. They can be living someplace and all of a sudden they're getting a letter from their landlord, hey, this is a problem right now. And I can tell you where one problem lies is in renewals right now, because renewals are behind with the city. So someone gets paperwork in advance. What the normal process is, HRA sends out a letter. Some people don't open those letters because usually when you get letters from HRA, they're threatening and nasty and they're like, we're going to cut everything off. And so people just throw them away, right? They don't read them. And who can blame someone? But what happens is HRA sends information to the tenant. Then the tenant can renew. You can print out a renewal form yourself if you're not getting one from HRA, but you can Complete the form via email, mail, or in person. And I would always suggest email because then you have a receipt that you sent it. Mail tends to get lost. So you can also ask for home-based assistance when it comes to renewals. Your rent and household share are set for a year. You can request modifications or changes if something happens in your household that warrants a change. If your landlord wants to increase the rent, your landlord has to wait until the lease time is up. A lease is a legal binding agreement between you and your landlord, and it cannot be broken mid-contract unless both parties agree. So if you're like, no, you're not raising my rent right now because my lease isn't up until August 31st, then that's your tenant as a right. That is your right as a tenant. If you remember that anytime you have any changes to your household, let HRA, let HomeBase, let someone know. Section 8 requires recertification once a year. FEPS does not have to be renewed because FEPS is dependent on a PA cash assistance case. As long as the PA cash assistance case is left open, the FEPS should be okay. You have to recertify your public assistance case every year with HRA. And if you have any changes in income within 10 days, you're actually supposed to be reporting that. Once your household share can change more often based on your situation, and you can also recertify online through Access HRA. You can also ask HomeBase for assistance. Tips for voucher holders. Pay attention to the expiration date on your shopping letter. If you need more time to find an apartment, reach out for an extension before it expires. Watch out for scams. We all believe we know when we're being scammed, but if it seems too good to be true, it usually is. You shouldn't pay more than $20 for an application fee, and you shouldn't be paying for key money or to pay to look at an apartment. If someone says, hey, come over here, I have an apartment, and that doesn't feel right to you, walk away. Whenever you're working with a caseworker from a nonprofit agency or a broker or a landlord or anyone you speak on the phone to, get their name and their number and a way to contact them. Because a lot of people come in and they were like, I spoke to Melissa, and okay, I spoke to Melissa from CAMBA. There's several Melissas at CAMBA. So, if we know exactly who you're speaking to, it's good. It's a good practice to get in no matter what. Side deals with landlords are not allowed. No one should ask you for any more money than what is in your rent and what is your share, no matter what. You should not pay additional money. You should never agree to pay more money than what is the maximum rent for your unit. Sometimes in Section 8, you can go above. If you have Section 8, you can go above the maximum rent, but you need permission from Section 8 to do that. And you need to have a conversation with them so that they can, let you know how much and what it is that they need in order to make that happen. If you need assistance with moving costs that aren't covered by your voucher, say a security deposit, furniture assistance, you may be eligible for a one-shot deal from HRA for first month's rent, security fee, broker's fee, and moving fees. And if you are denied from HRA, you can always come and discuss that with HomeBase. When a landlord or broker treats you differently and because you have a voucher, it's called source of income discrimination. And that is not allowed. It's illegal. Who to contact at what, who does what? Because it's very confusing. Some things we do, some things like we don't do FEPS to stay, right? We do all these other FEPS, but we don't do FEPS to stay. So in HRA. So FEPS recertifications, modifications, or restorations, you can go to HomeBase or you can go directly to HRA. For City FEPS renewal, modifications, or restorations, you can see that. City FEPS moves in the community, assistance with arrears or eviction prevention, you go to HomeBase. If you have HPD Section 8 questions, you got to go to New York City HPD. Shopping letter questions, whoever issued your shopping letter. If HomeBase didn't issue your shopping letter, but you have questions about it, you should go to whoever issued that shopping letter. And if you have NYCHA questions, contact NYCHA. And yeah, we have these nice little, what's that tell you, right? To go to NYCHA or whatever. But if you flip the page, you can see that we have actual numbers and how to contact each of these entities.
I want to introduce our next panelist. Miss Elizabeth Byrd is the founding member of Unlock NYC's Leadership Collective. Her experience in housing voucher spans over 17 years. Without further ado, Miss Elizabeth Byrd, please come up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. I'm Elizabeth Byrd from Unlock NYC. At Unlock NYC, we build mobile tools to help New Yorkers with vouchers record and report discrimination as they search for an apartment. We are a collective of New Yorkers imagining and building together. We are tenants, advocates, community leaders, engineers, designers, 100% woman-led, majority led by tenants who has voucher. I'm one of them. In New York City, we have one of the most comprehensive human rights laws in the country. The biggest one is lawful source of income, as Melissa just mentioned. This pervasive type of discrimination specifically targets prospective tenants with rental assistance vouchers and other supplemental income sources, for example, FEPS, City FEPS, Section 8, HASA. An estimated 200,000 New Yorkers relied on rental assistance to pay their rent each month. Source of income discrimination is hard to catch and takes many, many forms. I personally have been through most of these, especially ghosting. And ghosting comes in many, many forms. Like for instance, the broker told me, hey, we have an appointment, I'll see you 9 o'clock Friday morning. I'm like, fine. I get there, and guess what he did? Personally ghosted me. Not stopped talking to me, not calling me. I just waited, and he never showed up for me to view the apartment. My experience. Every time I call a listing, it was the same. I never felt like we had a fair chance to find housing for me and my kids. And we have thousands of single mothers going through the same process every single day. At Unlock NYC, we use tech, media, and design to connect more tenants to justice. We have physical card, Know Your Right booklets. We have a chat bot that can record and report all your discrimination on the website or on your phone. We combine tech tools with personal support. Since January 2021, we have provided one-on-one phone support to 150 plus users. 100% of new Unlock users receive an outreach call and text after their first report. We found that users who receive one-on-one support are 2-3 times more likely to report more than once. 9 users have been matched to a dedicated volunteer advocate. Join us in the fight to make vouchers work. We're on TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can also, volunteer services. We have English and Spanish, and hoping to get more languages, as more voucher holders come to us.
Thank you, Elizabeth. What an amazing tool, Unlock NYC. Everybody, let's get your phones out and, start asking questions or start reporting. So with that being said, I am about to introduce the main show, the panelists. So without further ado, let me introduce our first panelist to the table. Ms. Melissa Mowery, who is the Senior Vice President for CAMBA HomeBase, Workforce Development, and Refugee and Asylee Services. Please have a seat. Next up, Unlock NYC, Ms. Elizabeth Byrd, the Leadership Collective member of Unlock NYC. Next up, the Supervising Attorney for the Source of Income Discrimination Unit of New York City Commission Human Rights, Ms. Stephanie Rivera. From volunteer from Neighbors Together, Ms. Nailah Abdul-Mubdi. Yes. Thank you so much. And currently, in District 35, New York City Council member, Crystal Hudson. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, audience. Please, panelists, if you guys can each give a 1 to 3 minute intro about yourselves, your role, and what your agency does, and relevant to voucher holders. Please tell me, how does your work apply to this lovely resource fair and panelist discussion that we're going to be having today.
So I am Melissa Mowery. I am the Senior Vice President for CAMBA's HomeBase program, Workforce, Refugee, and Asylee Services. And I've been at CAMBA this is my 24th year. And being the city's, HomeBase was the city's primary prevention program. It's been what I've dedicated my life to for the past 24 years. And it's taken me that long to basically learn all the nuances of housing court and how people move through the city and into homelessness and being unhoused. And so I'm really excited about having partners here at this table and in the community that we can educate and talk to the issues that we seem to be seeing a lot of. And so that's what I'm bringing to the table. I manage 7 CAMBA locations and 1 RV.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Byrd. I'm a mom of 6. I think Unlock either found me or we found each other because I'm very passionate at what I do. I'm basically the lead on the reports. So if you're a voucher holder and you have source of income discrimination and you're like, okay, let me check out this app. Let me see what's going on. I want to report because I'm tired of these brokers, landlords, discriminating. I'll be the first one to see your report. And I will gather my team and we will fight whatever type of fight we can, to help you report this discrimination. And because, it's been like going to 18 years, I've been living with a housing voucher, in and out of shelter. I totally understand what voucher holders are going through because I still have a voucher. And when I need information from different voucher holders because they reported, and I will let them know, I'm like, hey, I get it, I understand, I've been there, I'm still there. They understand, they have that trust in me, like, we will fight, and if your report's not good, I will give you tips, and then I'll pass the baton to my team member, head of outreach, and she will follow up. And basically, as a team, we all work together to get the help you need.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Rivera. I am the supervising attorney for the Source of Income Discrimination Unit at the New York City Commission on Human Rights. The commission is basically the city agency that's charged with enforcing the New York City human rights law. So we are a law enforcement agency. My team in particular, we investigate lawful source of income discrimination that can look different for different people. We do what's called pre-complaint interventions where we receive reports from Unlock NYC with their amazing chat tool to basically give us the evidence we need to do immediate interventions on behalf of voucher holders. So what that looks like, we can receive a report, we'll speak with you if you're seriously interested in the unit still and we have enough evidence of discrimination. We will immediately contact that broker or landlord on your behalf and let them know that, hey, you're in violation of the New York City human rights law. If you don't correct your actions immediately by allowing this individual to view, apply, or move into the unit, we will bring a discrimination lawsuit against you, which works a lot, but also doesn't work. In the cases where it doesn't work, or maybe you're not interested in the unit anymore, you don't want to work with those individuals, you don't want to live in a space where your landlord or your management company has discriminated against you, you can file a formal complaint with us. And we work with you to draft the complaint. We'll serve it on your behalf. Our law enforcement bureau does the internal investigative work on your behalf. And basically makes a decision about whether they believe discrimination occurred or not. If we do find cause that a violation has occurred, we can pursue monetary damages in the form of compensation to you. We can impose civil penalties that the city collects up to $125,000 per violation. We also seek other forms of relief. We may do training. We require people in the housing world to attend our trainings on lawful source of income discrimination. We'll make sure that they revise all their policies, do fair housing postings, and we also have a unique opportunity when we do settlement agreements if people don't want to move to trial, where we get housing providers to set aside apartments exclusively for voucher holders. And we work with a lot of community partners that are here tonight, like Unlock NYC and Neighbors Together, to fill those set-aside units. And so that's just like a small snippet of what we do.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Nailah Abdul-Mubdi. I am a volunteer at Neighbors Together. I'm also a vet voucher. Neighbors Together is located at Ocean Hill, Brownsville. Neighbors Together mission is to fight homelessness and food insecurity. Neighbors Together mission regarding to homelessness and housing voucher is one of the programs called Community Action Program, where that the members there, such as myself, are voucher holders, led by vouchers holders. And basically, we strategize housing voucher policies regarding to like city FEPs. Like one of our most historic wins was Intro 146, was to increase the amount of city FEPs vouchers. And that's when a lot of people started getting housed, along with increased source of income discrimination. So then, once that had happened, we strategized again to increase resources at source of income discrimination, CCHR. So we do a lot of policy lobbying with council members to share our personal stories to change narrative of what homelessness look like and what housing vouchers go through while searching for housing. So when we're using our personal stories, we use it to, impact policy change, impact housing in New York City. And also, just sharing our stories to influence other stakeholders as well. So with that being said, I'm pass it over to Councilmember Hudson.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Crystal Hudson. If you live in Crown Heights, Prospect Heights, Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, or a sliver of Bed-Stuy along Franklin Avenue, then I am your council member. Our office really serves as a resource for everyone. We usually refer people to many of these organizations that are here partnering with us this evening and the ones in the back with tables. And I also write and introduce and pass legislation. So one example is the City Council is currently reviewing amendments to how we administer City FEPS vouchers. So for example, there's a 90-day rule that you must be in the shelter system for 90 days. We don't believe that that should be the case. And so we're looking into eliminating that from part of the requirements for City FEPS. Just one example that we heard at the hearing that we hosted, I think it was maybe a month or so ago, a few weeks ago, was a woman who had a voucher, was in the shelter system, was looking to get out, but then was hospitalized due to an illness. So she left the hospital, she left the shelter, entered the hospital, And then when she came back into the shelter system, that 90-day rule kicked back in, meaning it started back from day 0. And after she had already spent a month or 2 in the shelter system. So we're trying to get people housed as quickly as possible and as many people housed as possible. We have a housing specialist in our office every Wednesday. So you can come to our office and see a housing specialist who can help with everything from vouchers to the housing lottery, recommending legal counsel if that's necessary, depending on your case. Our office is there to help every day, but in particular on Wednesdays, we have additional staff there to help specifically with housing. So I'll just say our phone number really quickly for anybody who might want to write it down, but it's 718-260-9191, 718-260-9191, and we're located at 55 Hanson Place, which is right by the Atlantic Avenue train station near the Apple Store. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. Let me add, if you see our panelists today, it is an all-female panelist, so can we give a round of applause for that, please? So my first question that we have to panelists, to all the panelists, anyone who would like to answer, what assistance does your organization, office, offer that could be useful to voucher holders or folks searching for an affordable apartment? Anyone can answer.
We assist people with determining eligibility for vouchers, and we also we have information about relocation, specifically about ways in which to look for an apartment. Like I said earlier, we're not brokers, we don't do that, but we do have information about how and where. And a lot of people always ask us for a broker's listing, and I'm like, you should be going to any broker. Any broker should be able to assist you. So that's something that we do at our agency, and we also have legal services that we provide.
At Neighbors Together, can you hear me? Okay. At Neighbors Together, we provide Know Your Right workshops, far as, know your rights as a voucher holder, and also we have housing search as well. And, that's when you start the documentation of communication with your broker or landlord. And also there are also housing advocates as well on site to help you with any other housing needs regarding, outside of the workshops where they could provide any service with. And also either any other resources that we could, transfer you to our partners as well with any other accommodation that you might need regarding to housing service that we do not provide.
We also provide a monthly workshop, just in case you need tips on how to report your discrimination, other resources. We usually have like a guest speaker for that month. And we're trying to do more resource fair to connect with our people.
I'll just reiterate, the biggest asset I think we can offer as you're actively searching for housing is our pre-complaint intervention. We have a team of about 4 interventionists that are always ready, willing, and able to step in when we're notified of a complaint.
This is for Nailah from Neighbors Together. Do you have any tips on how to talk to landlords, brokers, or leasing agents when you're searching for an apartment with a voucher?
Oh, yes. So normally when you search for apartment via online, as far as, Street Easy or any of those websites, and you got to inquire about apartment, it always says the broker's name or the landlord number or what brokerage firm they're from. So it's normally like a little chat box. You say, hello, I'm interested. It's normally like generated. So normally they reply, and it's always, then landlords, when my experience is searching for a home with a voucher, they always have the same general response, like, hey, I see that you're interested in apartment, blah, blah, blah. And they always want to know, what's your name, how many people in the household, what is your income, what is your credit score? So as a voucher holder, that's always a tricky question because, you don't fit either in the credit or the income, or either both. So with my approach, what we always tell housing, other housing vouchers, even myself, I answer the question and I tell me, my credit's not that good, but I'm working on it. However, I have a voucher that covers the full rent and is guaranteed. So with that being said, normally, as Elizabeth from Unlock had pointed out, that's when the ghosting happens, or that's when they say, oh, well, I'll get back to you. I have to speak to the landlord. And that's just another tactic that they use, or they say, okay, sure. They set up a time, and then again, what Elizabeth have stated, they don't show up. Or, they either, or also, they schedule appointment, they did, they view it, and, ask for applications and things like that, move forward, but then you don't get selected. And that's when the whole, it gets really tricky because you don't know whether you've been discriminated against or there's been like a pool of other people that they go through. So of course they're gonna go with the person who's paying with a voucher. So normally that's normally the experience that most voucher holders have had. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Nailah. I'm glad you actually brought up discrimination because that's our next question. Discriminating against, oh, sorry, go ahead, Elizabeth. Yeah?
Yeah. So my tip would be get a little bit creative. When they ask about income, you get, say you're just a 2-people family, you get to maybe, I'm just suggesting, like $2,000. You're like, okay, well, beside what I work for and the voucher, add it up, and you tell them, well, this is my income. Nailah said, my credit's not so good. But get your foot in the door and see the apartment first. Because we haven't gotten to the application yet. When you get to the application, then you can mention about the voucher. But sometimes you gotta be creative in order to get inside.
Gotta be creative.
Sometimes it works.
Yeah, you're right. Point. So,
Sorry,
no, do not.
I just want to add one last thing, just on that point. Landlords are very creative all the time. And so I just want to reiterate what she said, because I think too often we are not creative ourselves for fear of retaliation, which is totally validated because of the actions we know are so often taken by landlords. And so I would say, I second that, because as long as they're being creative with sometimes rejecting our applications, we should just as well be creative in how to get a viewing and an apartment.
Yes. With these creative tactics, what if a landlord, and this question I'm directing to Commission on Human Rights and Councilmember Hudson, what if a landlord is discriminating against me for other reasons, like the fact that I'm a student, that I have a disability, or that I have a criminal background? What options do I have to defend myself against this discrimination? If Stephanie, you can answer first, and then Councilmember Hudson, please.
So the New York City human rights law, someone mentioned earlier, I think it was Elizabeth, that New York City human rights law is one of the most expansive anti-discrimination tools in the country, honestly. So if someone is discriminating against you based off of any protected class that's listed in the law, you should definitely contact the commission to file a complaint, particularly for disability, color, race, creed. Presence of children is also a big one that we see a lot, especially for voucher holders. We see a lot of single parent homes with young children. And so a lot of times what we will try to do is, when we draft a complaint, we will note several protected classes in a single complaint. So we'll allege lawful source of income violation, we'll allege presence of children violation. If someone in the household has a disability, we can allege disability discrimination. So that's just one tool. In particular, I'll highlight disability discrimination in New York City and New York State. You do have a right to a reasonable accommodation that is provided by your landlord and paid for by your landlord. It is what you are entitled to. The landlord would have to demonstrate that the reasonable accommodation is in fact not reasonable. imposes an undue burden on them in some sort of financial or other way. But that is not for, that's not to prevent you from actually asking for the accommodation. So if you need a ramp into your building or a lobby lift, or if you have an emotional support animal and your building manager says, hey, we have a no pet policy, that's actually a request for an accommodation and they should be granting that to you. And so if you find yourself in a situation where that is not the case, contact the Commission on Human Rights.
And just from my office's perspective, I mean, again, we refer constituents basically to all of these organizations, to legal services providers like Legal Aid, Brooklyn Defenders, NILAG. There are a number of different organizations that provide legal representation to those who may need it. And my recommendation is to come to my office or your local council member's office as soon as something happens, and don't wait, because the sooner you come into our office and the sooner we can connect you to help and to a resource and address the issue at hand.
Thank you. And everyone remember Crystal Hudson's office, 718-260-9191. Yes, I remember that. Next question, it's still pertaining to do with reporting this discrimination and what happens after. This I'm directing to Stephanie from Commission on Human Rights. After you report housing discrimination, what kind of assistance or advocacy that can the administration provide in the case of source of income discrimination?
Pre-complaint interventions, it's a large part of what we do on the daily. Our main prerogative is to secure the housing for that household. And if that means we have to get in contact with landlords and brokers several times a day, that's what we're gonna do. We also have contacts with our sibling agencies, including HPD, NYCHA, and HRA. And so if we find out that, say, you're having delays in the lease-up process, right? Your packet isn't being approved, or an inspection didn't go through and failed, right? We will step in and support you, particularly if a landlord is threatening to back out of the deal, essentially. So if they're failing to make repairs, we'll contact them and tell them, you need to make your repairs because this is part of the program requirements for the unit to be habitable, right, for anyone. And so we will, if we have to threaten them with litigation, then that's what we'll do. And if we have to move forward with litigation, that's what we'll do. The complaint process itself is a bit longer, so you'd have to meet with an attorney in our office at 22 Reed Street in downtown Manhattan. You'd meet with an attorney and do what's called an intake. Basically, they're going to collect all of your information, all of the facts regarding your claim. It's your time to submit documents and any supporting evidence that supports your claim. The lawyer will draft the complaint, serve it on all parties, including you. The landlord or the broker has an opportunity to answer, right? They will submit their side of the story. We do a full-on investigation that can include interviewing parties, requesting additional documents, etc. Finally, the commission, particularly the Law Enforcement Bureau, will make a decision, and they will basically issue what's called a notice of probable cause, or notice that no probable cause was found. If you get a notice of probable cause, that means there's enough evidence there for the commission to say, hey, a violation of the law has occurred. We take cases in New York City to the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings in New York City. It's another administrative agency. That is where we litigate. And so when we do a hearing, we would ask maybe the person who's aggrieved, right, to come in and submit testimony or submit their documents again to the judge. The judge issues what's called a report and a recommendation. They submit it to the head of our commission, the commissioner, and the commissioner actually makes the final decision. at which point the commissioner can also dictate how much is paid in damages, both to you and to the city of New York for their violation. So as I stated, violations can go up to $125,000. If the commissioner finds that their actions were malicious and willful, they can actually increase penalties to $250,000. And then that's not including payments that they would have to give to you for any sort of lost housing opportunity and emotional distress damages. So it is a longer process. I always try to prepare people who will file a complaint that it's not a simple 2 or 3 month process. It can take several months to over a year, depending on how in-depth your case is. But if you are willing to do it for the long haul, the commission and the attorneys will definitely handle your case.
Thank you, Stephanie, and that's an amazing protection that I feel so informed about. I'm glad you mentioned with earlier on failing to make repairs, because that's going to lead to my next question to Neighbors Together and Unlock NYC. Let's say my apartment's in bad shape, and my landlord has ignored me when I ask them for repairs. They're failing to make those repairs. And I think they're treating me differently because I have a voucher, I have city FEPS, I have FEPS, I have Section 8. What can I do? If Nailah and Elizabeth from Neighbors Together and Unlock NYC, please, if you could answer the question.
I can go first. From what I know is we will definitely send you to our resource partner, Just Fix.
Yes, and Neighbor Together, what I would recommend is, speak to other neighbors in your building and ask them how has their process of receiving any repairs in their apartment. How has that been? Have you had any delays or any, being ignored? And if so, write that down. Like always, and also any communication you have with your landlord or any, landlord or the maintenance, anybody, always document far as writing the name, the time, the date, what was exchanged, and also you can record it on your phone also, have the record button on. And document those exchanges. And if you have gathered enough documentation or evidence, send it over to CCHR. They can help with that as well, because you're being discriminated based on your voucher, because you're not getting the proper services you need, just like anyone else in your building who probably doesn't have a voucher. So that's what I would recommend. You just have, speak to your neighbors and ask how their experience has been.
Sorry, I just want to add one really quick thing. So you can reach out to any elected official's office, and if you share with them the experience that you've had, they should be willing to write a letter to the landlord. Usually having the city seal or the state seal or the congressional seal or whatever it is on our letterhead is sometimes intimidating to the landlords. So we can send a letter on your behalf stating, we believe that this constituent of ours has been discriminated against. If you don't basically clean up your act immediately, then we'll have to take things to the next level, whatever that might be.
I forgot one more thing. Also, you could report it to HBD, Housing Code Violation as well. And that's another basically paper trail that you're leaving also, that you have requested repairs. And then also normally what the agency do is, put in a ticket, and then the landlord have a specific time to, make those repairs. And if not, it'll be a violation, of course. And if, the agency will also send a paper back so you could actually okay, did the landlord repair it, then at what date? And if not, that's how the whole process works. And again, you can send it over to CCHR and then also a council member Hudson office as well.
I just want to plug Just Fix NYC because they are a great place where they can help you. They can help you determine whether your housing is rent stabilized or private. They also have a mechanism where they can write letters on your behalf if they have enough information to auto-generate letters on your behalf to write to your landlord. So Just Fix NYC is a great agency for repair issues.
Thank you. My next question is pertaining to payments. This question I'm directing to Unlock NYC and CAMBA HomeBase. Say I have a FEPS or City FEPS voucher, and my landlord says the rent subsidy payments are being sent late, or they're not being sent at all. Who should I contact for assistance? What can I do if my landlord tries to evict me for unpaid rent?
So your landlord is not receiving payments from you or the city. It depends on who's not, if they're not receiving payments from the city and the tenant is making payments, then you could contact HomeBase to check on those payments or go into a benefits access center and try to meet with someone to talk about why those payments aren't being made. If a landlord says they're going to take you to court because you're not paying rent, then, you know, as a tenant, you have rights. And so a landlord can say that all they want, but there's a specific way that they need to serve you to go to housing court. And so if that were the case, I would also look at housing court answers online or at housing court. There's someone who sits at housing court from housing court answers, and they can answer and give a lot of useful information to a tenant who may be in that situation. There's a lot of legal service providers in the city, but right now it's really difficult to get to them because of being under-resourced and you know, overwhelmed with cases right now. But there are places where you can go to speak to paralegals and get some initial, I don't want to say legal advice because we can't practice law without a license. We leave that up to the licensed professionals, but we can talk in generalities what normally happens in certain cases. You can also, there's also a part of housing court where you can bring a court case against your landlord for repairs, but that is a long process as well. So those are just a couple of suggestions.
Okay. I have a follow-up question actually with that one as well. Let's say if I lost my apartment and I don't have anywhere to stay, but I don't want to go into the shelter system. Can I apply for the City FEPS voucher or another rental assistance program my own? This is for CAMBA as well, Melissa.
If someone is not housed, but they're not in shelter and they're doubled up with someone, there is a, you know, there's an eligibility process, and I would advise that person to go to HomeBase to be assessed for services. That would be my advice.
Thank you. This question's for, based on eligibility, Neighbors Together and Councilmember Hudson. What if I'm not eligible for a voucher? What options do I have for affordable housing as someone with low income?
As someone who is low income and doesn't have a voucher, unfortunately, the only option is Housing Connect Affordable Housing and NYCHA, and that process is long. Also, again, what Melissa has stated, for City FEPS to get a voucher, you have to go through one of their criteria, which is meeting the income. So as she stated on her presentation, you have to at least make at or below the federal poverty level, depending on your household size. So if you do not, fit under that that criteria, the only option is affordable housing and Housing Connect. Again, at Neighbor Together, what we do, because of this gap that we have, and also the dire need for affordable housing, that's where we advocate and try to, also advocating for policies for this group of individuals who are housing insecure.
Thank you. There are some programs through like the Department of Finance, in particular SCREE, which is the Senior Citizen Rent Increase Exemption Program, and DRE, which is the Disability Rent Increase Exemption Program. There are a lot of people who are eligible for these programs and don't know it. So if you came to our office and you said you're not eligible for a voucher, we would go through an intake process and try to identify other opportunities like those programs and some others that exist to try to get you assistance for monthly rent.
I'm gonna add one more thing.
Oh.
Okay. Also, as of now, the state is now, well, Neighbors Together, on one of our state campaigns, we are advocating for HAVP, which is Housing Access Voucher Program. It's very close to passing, and this bill will house the specific group where this question was addressed to allow them to have housing, and and also sustain housing, even though they fit in between. So we're still waiting for this bill to pass, and also good cause eviction as well, where that bill on the state level will allow people to stay home and not being harassed or not even being evicted because their rent has been increased to $300, $500. And we already know that although rent is increasing, not wages. So this is why homelessness is basically a huge problem in NYC. So I'm gonna end it with that.
Preach. All right, my last question is going to Unlock NYC, Neighbors Together, and Councilmember Hudson. How can voucher holders, and I'm really glad you mentioned about advocacy, how can voucher holders and community members, us in this audience, get involved in advocacy work? In other words, what can I do to help make change? How can we vouch for voucher holders?
Basically, when it comes to Unlock, for us is report. We don't have a following as yet. Hopefully soon.
We'll get it up. We'll get it.
So basically, it's like our users, we're hoping to get a following so we can, go to Albany, support, Neighbors Together with some of the bills we want to pass. We've done workshops. We've basically, because we're very tiny, we are basically giving impacted housing voucher holders opportunity. Right now on our team, we have 2 full-time members. They no longer have a housing voucher. So this is part of, our way of giving back. One way is joining the Leadership Collective. And just becoming an advocate. How passionate are you in this fight?
I go. How I started in advocacy for housing vouchers, I started as just going to a housing voucher provider. They gave me a voucher and said, here's your voucher, just let me know when you find an apartment, and it has to be within the voucher amount. And that was it. I was just on my own. So, my housing search, it was daunting. And then I knew that I wasn't the only one, because it was really frustrating, because I thought that, okay, the only way I could get myself together, get a home for my kids, and, get back on with my life, start my goals. And I knew that this experience was not mentally healthy. And what I did, I just, was going online and searching like Facebook, if there's a group going through the, people going through the same thing, which there are. There's like 3 or 4 housing voucher groups that have over 1,000 of members sharing their stories. And then also, that's when I went into Neighbors Together doing a housing search, Know Your Rights. And that's when I learned about, my rights as a voucher holder and everything what I was experiencing. And I met other people as well with vouchers. And that's how we built a little community at the Community Action Program at Neighbors Together. And then that's when we started our Value Housing campaign. We just sat in the community cafe and just asking questions like, okay, what voucher you have. What issues are you having with finding a home? What is your story? And that's how we implemented, our campaign into strategizing, changing the narrative, who are our targets and things like that. So what I say is advocate for yourself, and you can always find someone, who's probably going through the same one, just trying to find that support. And at Neighbors Together, that's what we do. We campaign and advocate for policies regarding homelessness and housing vouchers and city and state campaigns. Again, it's member-led. Everyone who's in the Value Housing campaign is led by voucher holders, City FEB, Section 8, all of the above. And that's how we implement change, just on our stories and solutions on how it be fixed. So I'm gonna leave it at that.
Thank you. I second all of that. I think there are many, many ways that that advocacy can look like, and those are definitely some of them. I think also forming a tenant association. If you're talking with your tenants, with your neighbors, and you are hearing similar stories that other people are having, you're always stronger together. And oftentimes what landlords rely on is the fact that they don't think, or they know for a fact that people aren't talking to each other. And you may never know how many of your neighbors are experiencing the exact same thing. So joining together with them, joining a tenant association, there are plenty of organizations that can help in forming those tenant associations like Impact and CUF, and many others. You can join groups like that, join groups like the ones that are up here that you can become part of their advocacy campaigns, and then also advocating from a legislative perspective. So if you know that there are laws that have yet to be passed, whether it's at the city or the state level, like good cause eviction, making sure that you're reaching out to your elected officials, you're writing to them, you're calling their offices, you're showing up, maybe you're participating in protests or rallies to make sure that they know the type of laws that you would like to see enacted.
Thank you, panelists, for the pre-prepared questions I have completed. And now we're going to go into the audience for the key Q&A questions. So my staff will be coming along to collect the questions. Julia, and Suko, if you guys can come along and collect the cards. I do have some Zoom questions that did come in, so I will be directing some of these questions to the panelists in the meantime while cards are being collected. So please, anyone in the audience, look out for the staff. They will be collecting the questions from the Q&A session right now. So we're going to start with a few Zoom questions that did come in. The first one's directed to Elizabeth from Unlock NYC. If someone had their NYCHA emergency housing voucher with their key, they received their key, withheld their key, their key was withheld. Is Unlock able to assist them?
Very tricky question. I do believe with our resources, we possibly can. With, our partners, different organizations we deal with. My motto is, if we don't have the answer, we will find the answer.
I love it. Absolutely, Stephanie.
Contact Stephanie.
Contact Stephanie, who asked that question.
Or your local council member.
Or the council member.
Well, we have partners.
Love it. Partners, what's happening? For any of the panelists or HomeBase, does your credit impact your voucher eligibility?
No.
Love it. Mic drop. No. Anyone else? Okay, great. Again, I have another question for HomeBase. Are vouchers accepted outside the 5 boroughs of New York City?
Unfortunately, no.
Got it.
It's city funded, so it goes to the 5 boroughs in the city.
This question, though, I have from the audience for any of the panelists. How can you assist me in getting an apartment as an undocumented person?
Well, if you have money to move, that shouldn't be an issue. I mean, the issue is no one should be asking whether you're documented or not when you're looking for an apartment. So if you have money to, get into an apartment, that would be one way. If, in certain cases, if you're a mixed household, so if you have some people undocumented and you may have children that are documented, there's a possibility to be eligible for a voucher in that instance. So, you know, it really depends on the more specific information, but that's what I would say now.
Citizenship status is also a protected classification under the New York City human rights law. So no matter what your status is in the United States, landlords should not be asking you your status, nor should they be requiring specific documents that speak to your status. So if they ask you for a social security card or US birth certificate or a US passport, for instance, you're not required to have those documents. It can be considered discrimination under the law. They should give you an opportunity to provide alternate documents to verify your identity. That also includes any sort of employment documentation. So they do not have to ask you for your for any visa documentation, any working, blanking on the official term, any working authorization paperwork, thank you. We would consider that a violation under the law. In terms of like the power of the New York City human rights law, in addition to being the most expansive, there's a secondary law in New York City that basically says, hey, you judges, you have to interpret the New York City human rights law as expansive and as liberally as possible so that we are basically securing justice and equity, right? And so even though something may not be considered discrimination at the state level or at the federal level, in New York City, we are looking at instances and violations with the broadest potential for violation, right? So anything that we think, hey, this is actually being very detrimental to voucher holders or any protected class under the law, we are analyzing it, right, and interpreting it in the broadest way possible. So the commission is a really powerful place to seek justice.
Also, as I stated, the state policy that's been introduced and passed in both houses, HAVP, Housing Assets Voucher, also protect those who is not a citizen in New York City, New York State, in the United States. Also, those are one of the protected classes as well, such as those who does not make enough money, and also those who are undocumented as well.
Another question from the audience. Are there any youth-specific housing voucher resources within your respective offices to anyone on the panel?
I'm not familiar with anything that's specific to youth, but I would just say that you should definitely inquire with your local council member. We can connect you to organizations and services that might be relevant to you if you're under a particular age, or connect to your family if you have siblings or a guardian or anything like that.
There is a program for foster youth that are aging out of the foster care system. Usually they work with, I'm gonna butcher this, is DCD? Yes, thank you.
Got it.
And so they would work directly with agency contacts with the young person they can get a voucher. They can also get special set-aside units through HPD. So there are mechanisms for foster care youth who are aging out.
I also want to add, I'm sorry, in Value a Housing campaign, we also include these classes as well, because they are young and they don't really know how to navigate the housing process, especially knowing their rights as a housing voucher as well. So these are the also group that's included in our campaign, our advocacy groups. And this is one of the things that we inform them as well.
Great, thank you. Question from the audience. Is it possible to anyone on the panel, is it possible to get a voucher while between jobs? If you currently have an individual might have an unemployment income, what can be done to aid an immediate need for housing, an apartment, just an affordable apartment studio?
If someone, it's all based on income and imminent risk of homelessness. So if someone meets the income eligibility and they're at imminent risk of homelessness, then they should meet the eligibility for a voucher.
I'm glad you're still on the mic, Melissa, because I have another question for you. This is for HomeBase. Does my caseworker at CAMBA HomeBase assist me with finding an apartment? I know you mentioned in the maybe slides earlier, but we could do a repeat. And what is the responsibility of my caseworker at CAMBA HomeBase?
Your case consultant at CAMBA HomeBase is responsible for assisting you through the process. Your case consultant at CAMBA HomeBase is not a licensed broker, so they are not going to assist with finding housing. They can give you advice about ways to look for an apartment. We offer a package, and we offer some landlord listings and some other listings to find apartments, but the case consultant is not going to assist you with finding an apartment.
I have a question actually for Council Member Crystal Hudson from the audience. Can you speak a little bit about the state of the mayoral budget? How severe are the cuts to social services programs like ours? And when does this budget go into effect? I'm sorry, it's a three-part question.
That's okay. So we're currently in negotiations on the budget between the city council and the mayor. We just had a set of preliminary budget hearings in March, and right now we just submitted our response to the mayor's budget, which included many things in like funding social services, making sure that at absolute minimum agencies are fully funded so that they can do the work that they are supposed to do to serve New Yorkers. Most people have probably seen in the news, if they haven't experienced it firsthand themselves, that folks who were receiving food stamps weren't able to get food stamps earlier this year because there weren't enough staff in the agency to fulfill those food stamps. So we want to make sure that all of these programs and services and that the right things that actually go to helping New Yorkers and serving New Yorkers are fully funded and are funded to the level that they need to be. That also includes the right to counsel, which for everybody who's eligible right now, currently, not everybody who's eligible can even get access to an attorney because we don't have the funds available. We're not paying service providers what they should be getting paid in order to provide those services. So these are all things that the city council is fighting for. The next step in the process is we'll be having executive, the mayor will release an executive budget after the preliminary budget process, and then we have executive budget hearings. And so those should be happening next month in May. And then the budget isn't approved, assuming it's approved, but the budget won't be approved until June and then takes effect July 1.
I want to first and foremost thank you, panelists. I learned so much from you all. I'm continuing learning. And thank you all for being here. I'm going to have Dr. Walik Boone do closing remarks, but I just want to thank you all for being here, answering and providing amazing questions. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass this on to Dr. Walik Boone.
Wow, what a lot of information. I thought I knew a lot, but I didn't know enough. I didn't know enough. So let's give our panelists and our moderators another round of applause, please. And as I mentioned, the Transition Academy is here to serve students that's faced with homelessness, faced with housing instability, as well as food insecurity. We do have a food pantry here. We are a member of Food Bank that we serve our students 3 times a week. We also serve our community because we understand that Medgar Evers College just ain't come out the blue. Our community was part of establishing this great institution here. So during the pandemic, our community was hurting. So we said we have to go out there and serve our community. So we started what we call is the community pantry here. So our pantry is extended to our community twice a month, every Friday from 11 to 1, right here on Crown between Franklin and Bedford, and every last Tuesday from 3 to 5. Once again, we thank you for being with us, and